Why did you start college at 11?
Because I'm a nerd, David.
No, you were a nerd, but we were in a hurry to get out of a noisy and complicated house, too?
No, I mean, there was turmoil and trauma and pain in my childhood, but I don't think that's what I was out running. I think I think if there was an insecurity that fueled that, it was having a chip on my shoulder about these immense high-profile figures around me and wanting desperately to make my own mark on some level. It was all very ego-driven.
According to Moses Farrow and others, at the age of 4, Ronan would announce to people, "My sister is fucking my father." I don't know about you, but to me that definitely sounds like something a healthy 4-year-old would be going around saying without any undue adult influence.
He is an old soul. He's wise beyond reason. And he's absolutely devastatingly charming.
Oh, I thought I saw it.
No, you need your glasses on.
Yeah, I really do.
And funny. So smart. What a guy.
In Mia Farrow's world, where she was looking for children that could be renamed and remolded into her desired forms, Ronan Farrow is kind of her ultimate masterpiece. At first, Woody and others have said that Mia had an unhealthy obsession with her prior biological son, Fletcher. Fletcher reportedly slept in her bed until he was 7, and Mia wouldn't let him out of her sight more than she had to, bringing him with her to adult dinners and nightclubs where he would sleep under the table while they ate and drank, and insisting on bringing him along on vacations with just her and other adults. This is when she had 5 or 6 other children at home, but they weren't included in these events, just Fletcher. Fletcher eventually bought the house next to Mia's house in Connecticut, where he can still live next door to her to this day.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
When Ronan came along, it seems to have gone to another level. Ronan, of course, was born Satchel, but at various times went by the names Harmon, Seamus, and finally Ronan.
Satchel, the son that Woody and Mia had together, got tired of his classmates calling him a book bag. He changed his name to Seamus.
Suni has said that she thinks Mia can only love one person at a time, and both Suni and Moses have described her favoritism of her biological and white children. While Suni says she mostly had to fend for herself and had to babysit her siblings, do their grocery shopping and cook their own meals when they were children, Mia was reportedly alone in a room with Ronan with the door closed most of the time. Mia said that some tribes in Africa breastfed children until they were 7 or 8, and that she intended to do the same with Ronan. A babysitter and housekeeper who worked in Mia's homes, Sandy Bullock and Judy Hollister, described numerous incidents, and Bullock says she saw Mia often sleeping in the nude with Ronan until he was 11 years old. As Ronan got older, he seems to have been inseparable from his mother, accompanying her on trips she did for charitable work around the world. Again, the other children didn't seem to be included in these activities. It was just Ronan who was mother's constant companion. He's claimed that on one of these trips for UNICEF to the Sudan, he contracted what he describes as a severe illness, and he was in and out of crutches and wheelchairs from around age 16 to 20.
I actually had been in a wheelchair for a while and was just recovering, and he knew this, but
You'd had an infection from a trip to Africa.
It was left untreated while I was doing a lot of that traveling, and I had many surgeries. And
which severe illness it was, he's never specified, but Moses and others have stated unambiguously that what actually happened was that he had a series of operations to lengthen the bones in his legs because Mia felt that he would have a better chance of a career in politics if he was taller.
So the devil's child will rise from the world of politics.
Now maybe that sounds far-fetched, because a mother being willing to break her own son's legs and put him through years of surgery to mold his body into what she'd like it to be does indeed sound crazy. But another one of the things that Robert Whitey offered Ronan and Dylan $100,000 for was any medical records showing that he had an illness picked up in the Sudan which somehow led to these leg problems. And you would think that if Ronan had in fact contracted such an illness in the Sudan that he would have many medical records of it. But of course Ronan ignored this too, although you would think he would have liked to have $100,000 to donate to the Me Too causes he champions. Not only has he never provided medical records of his supposed illness, as far as I know he's never even named what this illness was supposed to be. Weigh that against multiple credible sources willing to state that they know the reason for his leg surgeries was cosmetic, and draw your own conclusions. To further understand Mia and Ronan's plans for his career and how it ties to the issue at hand, I think it's useful to look at the timeline of how Dylan's allegation against Woody resurfaced, and then I think the connections become abundantly self-evident. Ronan's history of using Woody Allen to goose his Twitter following goes back to about 2012. That's when he made the joke saying that in his family they called Father's Day Happy Brother-in-Law's Day. Now that tweet is kind of funny, I'll give him that. I don't begrudge him making a joke about the awkward family situation that Woody's marriage to Suni had created. After that, things were relatively quiet until October 2013, when Vanity Fair published a new profile of Mia Farrow in which she created headlines by dropping hints that Frank Sinatra might be Ronan's father. The new profile, which brought them both back into the headlines, came out less than 2 weeks before it was announced that Ronan would be releasing a new book. Then a couple months later, it really kicked into high gear when Woody was given the Cecil B. DeMille Award at the January 2014 Golden Globes. Ronan took the moment of the tribute during the telecast to tweet, quote, "Missed the Woody Allen tribute. Did they put the part where a woman publicly confirmed he molested her at age 7 before or after Annie Hall?" Timed simultaneously, though I'm sure it was just a coincidence, Mia also tweeted, "A woman has publicly detailed Woody Allen's molestation of her at age 7. Golden Globe tribute showed contempt for her and all abuse survivors." Now, it's interesting that Mia would say that this tribute showed contempt for all abuse survivors, given that she had just given permission to allow clips of herself to appear in this very tribute. Then she subtly tweeted, "Is he a pedophile?" and linked to the latest Vanity Fair profile, which, again coincidentally, had just been done a few months prior. Their sudden coordinated tweet storm, which brought the molestation accusation back into the news, coincidentally happened just over 2 weeks before it was announced that Ronan Farrow would be hosting a new MSNBC program. Only days after Ronan Farrow's new TV show is announced, Dylan Farrow suddenly publishes her famous open letter in which she restates her abuse allegation.
My own sister was part of the history of women who came forward and refused to shut up even when people around them told them to.
Even when you did?
Even when I did. I let my sister down. I was one of those many people in our culture saying, "This is an albatross, this is inconvenient, why can't you just shut up?"
You tried to talk her out of it.
I tried to talk her out of it, vigorously, saying, "Stay quiet, you've already lived through this trauma. Why bring it up again? Why hurt your career? Why hurt the rest of our careers?"
Ronan claims that before Dylan wrote this open letter, he tried to talk her out of bringing attention to the case again, which is interesting because he had already started trying to bring attention to the case again himself 2 years before that. Also hard to see how he was against her talking about it when he and Mia had both been making coordinated tweets about the exact same thing just weeks earlier. So they had hardly spoken about it in 20 years. Then all at once this huge Vanity Fair profile comes out of no place, and Mia decides to drop hints about Sinatra being Ronan's father, which I think obviously isn't true, but which manages to get both her and Ronan's name into the news again, all within 2 weeks of his new book deal. Then she allows them to use her clip for the words montage, so she knows that this montage is coming up, and she and Ronan have a coordinated tweet storm prepared when it airs, all within days of the announcement of his new TV show. And then only 3 days after his TV show is announced, Dylan has a spontaneous sudden interest in pursuing justice in a case which she could have brought up again any time in the preceding 2 decades if it was urgent to her. I mean, sure, it's conjecture the exact reasons for these events, but all the Farrows suddenly finding ways to put themselves in the headlines within days of one another, and timed to award season when Woody's new movie was getting a bunch of attention, hardly seems coincidental if you pay any attention to it at all. Now, concurrent to this, on February 4th, just days after the tweet storm and Dylan's open letter, actress Stacey Nelkin made a statement saying that representatives of Mia Farrow had contacted her trying to get her to claim that she had been underage when she had been in a relationship with Woody, which she wouldn't do because it wasn't true. There was an even more coordinated effort to dig up dirt on Woody, or to create dirt where none existed, going on from Mia Farrow behind the scenes. This was an organized campaign, and she wasn't particular about whether any of the allegations that came out were true or not. The Farrows made canny use of Twitter to reinvigorate their plans because the details of the when and why and how all these individual moments fit together don't fit into 140 characters. And they had a new audience of people that hadn't been around during the original case or didn't remember it, and what they were seeing now was simply headlines saying that a woman had been molested and no counterbalancing story, since the Farrows also knew that Woody didn't use Twitter and would respond slowly if he responded at all. So when your sum total of knowledge about the story is somebody that you respect retweeting as a fact the idea that Alan is a pedophile and he married his underage daughter, it looks pretty damning. It was big news for a while, but in 2014, Twitter still wasn't quite the hysteria machine that it became in the wake of Me Too, and Ronan's TV show didn't last for long.
At the time, Ronan was a fresh-faced reporter working for NBC News. a child prodigy who was accepted into Yale Law School at just 15. But his on-air resume at that point was limited to a failed MSNBC show.
Welcome to Ronan Farrow Daily.
Canceled after just one season.
In 2014, Ronan had seen something in how easy it was to mobilize an online mob to support his sister's claim without them knowing anything about the particulars of the story. So as soon as this TV show fails, and another one of those things that the Farrows would present as an astonishing coincidence, Ronan embarks on a quest to bring internet justice to another accused predator. Only he had noticed that he only got so far by accusing Woody Allen because Woody only had one allegation against him that had already been repeatedly disproven. So this time Ronan Farrow would go after somebody with many, many allegations against them. And also coincidentally, I'm sure, that person happened to be somebody who had distributed some of Woody's movies back after the original scandal between Woody and Mia, and who some people credited with helping Woody's career survive the drama.
I wonder if when you started reporting this, did you have any sense of where it would all go?
I think it was clear to all of us from the beginning how significant this was, what a deep vein of untold stories we were tapping into, and the breadth of this, that, very rapidly as we were reporting this, it became apparent this was not just a story about Harvey Weinstein or a story about Hollywood. This was about a set of systems used to silence survivors of sexual abuse.
This was the real stroke of genius here, because the amount of evidence against Weinstein is so vast and the number of accusers is so high that if enough of it comes out, you can't deny it, nor should you deny it. And it's good that Farrow's reporting helped bring attention to real sexual assault allegations by real victims who had previously been helpless to be heard.
Everyone wants justice to be done. If there's something like the Me Too movement now, you root for them. You want them to bring to justice these terrible harassers, these people that do all these terrible things. And I think that's a good thing. What bothers me is that I get linked in with them. I mean, people who have been accused by 20 women, 50 women, 100 women of abuse and abuse and abuse. And I, who was only accused by one woman in a child custody case, which was looked at and proven to be untrue, I get lumped in with these people. Now,
you can say that Ronan's work on Weinstein was undeniably a good thing, and also that his vendetta against Woody Allen is spurious and malicious. Both can be true. But the internet tsunami that followed the Weinstein reporting tore the internet into two camps, and with hundreds of news stories of alleged abuse hitting the internet every day, people didn't have either the time or the inclination to learn about every single one in detail. So to save themselves the effort and mental real estate, they reduced truth and due process to a team sport. Either you were with all of the accusers or you were with all of the accused. Now that's a false choice, but if it really was that simple, any decent person would want to support the victims, not the victimizers. And so Woody's story got swept up with the likes of Weinstein and Cosby, men who had dozens of credible allegations of rape and worse, compared to Woody's one thoroughly debunked allegation. Because Ronan Farrow was now a hero that had brought these dozens of other real allegations to light, to doubt him was to doubt the stories of many real victims who people believed that it was important to hear. But to say that one story is false obviously doesn't mean that you believe that no story of sexual assault has ever been true.
All I'll say is that I owe my smize to the brave sources who spoke.
Oh, wow. Noble. No.
Deciding which stories are real and which aren't should be a case-by-case decision, and it depends on the validity of the case, not on the name of the person who is giving the allegation. Ronan Farrow says that he wants the focus of the reporting to be on the brave women who have come forward, and yet he can't ever quite seem to help making himself the center of the case. For somebody who says he doesn't want to be the focus of what's happening, who would have you believe his actions aren't about himself and his career, it's strange that for years now his face has been a perennial presence on any talk show or media outlet that will have him.
Ronan Farrow.
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 Ronan Farrow is here.
He says that the focus of the story should be the women, but he can't help but telling it in the manner of an international conspiracy spy thriller and casting himself as the daring young James Bond or Fox Mulder.
In his book, Farrow chronicles how his investigation took him on a harrowing journey that reads like a Hollywood script of espionage and sabotage.
When you start to suspect you're being followed, you start to see the same people behind you on the street, and you're looking over your shoulder a lot, and you're seeing a car parked outside of your apartment at all hours, and you're ultimately moving out of your home to try to stay safe, and people are starting to tell you you have to get a gun. And there's a secret source that calls me and says, you know, he's under the code name Axiom at first, and says, you know, I'm in surveillance, walk against traffic for several blocks, go to one restaurant, go to another restaurant. And part of the narrative in here is how I dodged questions for years, not wanting to be the story, and said, look, I don't want to talk about the stuff that was directed at me. And when you realize that that personal story has to be a part of it, a book starts to become the correct format for it, because you can lay out the accumulation of evidence and events that you yourself lived through. So, you know, it is not about monetization. It was all very ego-driven.
I'm just saying, for a somber reportage on a serious topic, he has a real flair for drama, and it's directly resulted in him being a household name and an in-demand interview guest, which was the goal of those first tweets timed to the release of his MSNBC show all along. In the Weinstein case, Ronan's reporting had a good outcome, so it's easy to assume he had good motivations, and I won't rule out that he did. That was a virtuous case. But if anything, the thirst that the Farrows have for justice seems to be highly circumstantial. Mia says in 2014 that the Golden Globe's giving an award to somebody accused of sexual assault is a slap in the face of all survivors. But meanwhile, while Roman Polanski pled guilty to the statutory rape of a 13-year-old girl, not only did Mia volunteer to testify for him as a character witness, as recently as 2012 for the Criterion Collection DVD of Rosemary's Baby, she was willing to do interviews where she sang endless praises of Polanski. When an excerpt of Dylan Farrow's new novel Hush was published, coincidentally by Vanity Fair of all places, the introduction they posted said that you might know her from her byline on pieces advocating for abuse victims. Now, I've looked into this as much as I could, and if I'm wrong, then somebody please point it out to me, but I couldn't find Dylan Farrow's byline on articles advocating for anybody else besides Dylan Farrow. She surfaces like clockwork, timed to a Woody Allen movie getting good press or Ronan Farrow promoting something in his career, and posts a new editorial saying how nobody has paid enough attention to her abuse story, which of course millions of people paid attention to for decades. When her own brother Moses makes an allegation of abuse, the abuse advocate Dylan Farrow issues a statement that his story serves to re-victimize her. When somebody other than Dylan Farrow talks about being abused, Dylan thinks that the important part of the story is how Dylan feels about it. I've never seen her publicly comment on her own uncle, who she knew as a child, being convicted of molesting 2 young boys, or express support or sympathy for those victims. I've never heard her comment on or speculate about her uncle's story that he was molested by Dylan's grandfather, or even on Mia's statement that she was the victim of an attempted molestation within their family. It seems to me that Dylan Farrow is, above all else, an advocate for Dylan Farrow. And you know, to an extent that's fine. Whether by Woody or by Mia, I think it's obvious that what went on in 1992 was deeply traumatic for Dylan. She can live her own life and she doesn't owe anybody anything. But why I'm pointing this out is the dishonesty of the way that the Farrows take what is obviously a personal score they're trying to settle and paint it as some sort of benevolent advocacy on behalf of others.
Someone said this to me. She wants to bring Woody Allen down. She's caught up in the Me Too, Time's Up movement. And this is really what she's trying to do, is bring him down.
Why shouldn't I want to bring him down? Why shouldn't I be angry? Why shouldn't I be hurt?
Dylan and Ronan like to present themselves as benevolent underdogs fighting to tell truth to power, when the truth is that they're a phone call away from having access to every media outlet in the world. I think it's fair to fact-check their assertions when the entire issue here is whether or not the allegation against Woody Allen is true. And if Dylan is willing to distort facts when she talks about her alleged abuse, Ronan is exponentially more willing to do so. I'm going to use just one short clip of what Ronan has said as an example. He said, "I believe my sister. This was always true as a brother who trusted her and, even at 5 years old, was troubled by her father's strange behavior around her, climbing into her bed in the middle of the night, forcing her to suck on his thumb, behavior that had prompted him to enter into therapy focused on his inappropriate conduct with children prior to the allegations." So I mean, in this one simple statement by Ronan, he manages to pack in an impressive number of lies and distortions. First, while he says he was troubled by Woody's behavior toward Dylan when he was 5, he was actually 4 when Woody saw Dylan for the last time ever, and that was after Mia and Woody had been estranged for a while and Woody's visits with the children were supervised. The incidents he's describing were alleged to have happened when Ronan was more like 3, and moreover, of course, they never happened. The getting into bed in underwear and finger-sucking thing are more things commonly cut and pasted from Orth and others. For one thing, it's never been said to have happened in the middle of the night, because Woody and Mia never lived together, and he never spent the night at Mia's apartment. Ronan is misremembering and embellishing the stories from other people, which he is trying to pass off as his own memories. These incidents were also never part of Dylan's own account of what happened to her until almost 20 years after they were reported by others, and she then incorporated them into her stories. When he talks about about Woody going into therapy as a result of this behavior, he's yet again repeating the common lie that's been debunked so many times, which tries to distort Woody's talking to Dylan's therapist into Woody himself being sent into therapy. Ronan also ups the ante here, and he says that Woody was in therapy for conduct with children, plural, to try to imply that there might be more victims, when previously the lie has usually just been that he was in therapy for his behavior toward Dylan. Ronan also tries to say that Woody started the therapy sessions as a consequence of the getting in bed and thumb-sucking stuff that he claims he remembers. However, the therapy sessions in question started when Ronan was 3 or maybe even closer to 2, and he's trying to say that these events happened when he was 5. He's just free associating here, passing off secondhand allegations as his own memories and bumping his own age up from 2 or 3 to 5, because obviously him pretending to have these memories from the age of 2 strains credulity even for the mouth breather set that believes every single word that he types. But because of the credibility he gained with his reporting on Weinstein, Ronan gets an automatic pass because people feel that to discredit him is to question all the women who came forward in his reporting and all the women that came out inspired by the reporting in the time following. Ronan's reporting on Weinstein was valuable and it achieved some good results. The women who came forward in his articles should be listened to and taken seriously. And also, the known list of times he has willingly distorted the truth to meet his ends is a mile long. These things aren't mutually exclusive. The fact is that while Me Too has accomplished numerous good things and made it possible for many people who were ignored before to be heard, the stories don't travel by means of pure altruism.
You're on your global tour. This book is selling unbelievable numbers of copy.
Websites love to post these stories because they're the ultimate celebrity clickbait. For women who have an abuser who doesn't happen to be famous, it's not nearly as short of a road to getting your own personal Twitter mob to bring him down. It's good business, and as many women as he may have helped, you can't deny that Ronan Farrow's career was helped just as much.